Today on Between the Lines, inspiration for a changing world with Gary Szenderski. Welcome. I'm Barry Kibrick. Gary is an internationally acclaimed branding expert, a writer, and a proponent for positive change in business and in our individual lives. With his newest work, Book of Szen, that's S-Z-E-N, Gary believes that change is in the air, and as the real Zen is of the moment and what is, his Book of Szen celebrates what could be and the potential within us all to live a life of fulfillment.
Between the Lines with Barry Kibrick is made possible in part by
the government of Puerto Rico's tourism company, encouraging viewers to take a break and relax with a good book. Every page brings a new and exciting experience. Puerto Rico, a novel place to get away.
I'm a writer today because I was a reader when I was 11 years old, and it was...
You do not need to prove your state of happiness to anybody.
Most of these speeches were as much as a month in preparation.
Characters, the heroes in this book, are seekers of truth in a story that involves a lot of corruption.
I don't get a chance to really talk about what's real, and it's the perfect to do.
Gary, welcome to the show. It seems like it's been a while because I'm so glad this came about. I know I had a little influence in it.
Absolutely did. I mean, I'm here because of you, and that book is a book because of you.
Well, I want to tell my viewers how this happened. A long time ago, through my dear friend and a business acquaintance of yours, we met, and I was getting your little blogs known as Zensibility and different things you'd call it all the time. And I was truly enjoying them. And I'll never forget, I said, have you ever thought of putting this together in a book? And for years we've been talking about it, and now the Book of Szen is with me. Thank you, Gar.
Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm going to say that as you use it, Zen itself, Z-E-N, is of the moment and what is. The Book of Szen, S-Z-E-N, for your name, celebrates what could be. That's the mission of this book, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's because it was written over a long period of time. It was always about situations that were people going through some kind of transition. And when you're going through a change, whether you've created it yourself or it's come upon you somehow, you have to look at the possibilities in the best possible way. And that's what I was writing about. That was the feeling I wanted to impart. And I've been blessed to have kind of good stories in my own life that kind of support that.
Well, you know, when I introduce you to, you are one of the most internationally known men in branding. So there are some business elements in here too that could, if you have a small business or a major corporation, if you adhere to them, they'd be wonderful. But it's really mostly geared for the individual themselves to see within themselves their own wonderment.
We are really brands, if you think about it. I mean, that's where the correlation comes in for me, because what I've learned in business about how to be what you want to be when you grow up in terms of selling something really are the same principles that apply to individuals. And I don't try to hammer it home in the book, but you're right, there are things that you could, as a business, see that you could probably practice and become better for it.
But you yourself in the book say it's not a how-to book. It's a why not book. Yeah. So it's all of those roads less traveled, so to speak, those unanswered prayers that this is about, not so much the plotting and planning of how to do something, but more so the thinking and reasoning of why not to do something.
Right. And that's right. And I'm not about the process, and I'm not very good at the process. I'm good at helping people and see what they want to achieve and coming up with a vision. And I think that's where a lot of individuals and organizations fall short. They can't see where they want to go, or they limit themselves to what they think they have to do. And that's why it's a why not. Why not give it a shot?
Well, you say, be your own story. You got the control to create it. And you don't make any jokes about it. Think as grandiose as you want. You use Michelangelo as an example. Am I right? What's the line? If It's not the cliched one. It's better than that. It's, do you know it offhand? I have it down here. I'll find it.
It's better to aim too high and miss than to aim too low and hit the target.
No, that's it.
Something like that.
Yeah, it is. It's better, and that makes so perfect sense. Aim high and miss. Why aim low and hit? That's beyond me.
Right.
Now, let's take a look at this, because when I say be the story, you follow that with, it's painful to admit that everything you've done so far has only gotten you to this point, and not to your ultimate destination. Once, however, you accept it, the doors open wide. I personally feel that's one of my biggest struggles, is that, I get disappointed that I'm just not where I think I should be. And this book is really a guide to get you away from that kind of thinking.
And it tries to help you, give you some hints on how to do that, but it is very difficult. I know exactly what you mean, because I struggle with the same things. And so I have to remind myself all the time that no matter what happened before, I can only start from where I am right now. And so just appreciating, like being here, is just a great day. I drove here to see you and be on the show and with my son, and we had a great conversation, and whatever happened before to get me here, I can't change anyway, but if I want it to be better or bigger, now I can start making decisions to get there.
And you also tell us that we really need to dig deep to see what makes us essentially happy. And I don't mean happy, I mean it, in the truest sense of the word, fulfillment. Not just a good time at a party, but what really makes you happy. You want us to dig down there, and I guess that's part of the brand as well, isn't it? If you need to know the brand, which is ourselves, so well before you can truly exploit it to its greatest advantage.
That's totally true, and also it's in knowing what you're all about allows you to set goals of what you can really achieve. It's not a limitation, it's an exploration. I would say, like, for example, if I was doing Barry's brand, you have a curiosity about things. That's why you get in between those lines, and that curiosity is golden, because you see things that people can't see any other way. And uncorking that, though, is not necessarily part of your essential nature, because curious is you're always looking at other things. You're not looking at yourself. And sometimes you got to be a little bit willful and a little bit egocentric to kind of make it happen.
I'm laughing because, especially since I've booked you, that's what I have been working with, is literally looking at that, because I know how important it is, and you're right. It is a difficult thing to do. It's really, I'm finding it. This is easy. That is hard, isn't it? Isn't that funny?
The next thing is it was like easy for me to write every week a little bit here or there in a blog, but to put it together as a kind of an art form in a book was a lot more difficult. I can go into any company in corporate America or anywhere and do branding exercises. I can teach it at school like I do now, but writing it down and getting someone to really practice it. I think people are better at taking the advice, if you want to call it advice, from the book and doing it than I am. And I beat myself up, like I think you probably do as well, like, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking this? And it's really just our thoughts that are getting in the way. The reality is you can be whatever you want to be. It's just that you don't think you can more than you think you can. So.
Well, let's go over that a little bit, because we talk about the things that hold you back. 3 things you say: lack of vision, fear of failure, force of habit. The one I think is the big one, for me at least, is that vision. And vision is more than a goal. It is an aspiration, these are your words, that becomes inspirational. It must be clear enough to describe exactly what you want to achieve in such a way that others can appreciate it and support it. And it is funny, when you are the person, No matter, like you said, you can explain me better than I can explain me, and I probably could explain you better than you can explain you. But that is still, it's paramount. It's almost the theme that runs through that whole book is that clarity of vision.
And isn't it the most difficult thing to say, just let it go and be whatever you want it to be, if you had nothing to hold you back? But the sad thing, I think, is for a lot of us is we don't think we can, so we limit our vision.
Well, you say even, force a conclusion. Am I right? Force one upon yourself if you have to.
Yes, you know, you got to take action. That you just can't just daydream. You have to kind of take that first step. And I think I tell stories in the book about if you start putting something in motion, something will happen to get you there. It's not my law, it's the universe somehow gives you what you want.
You have a chapter called Stuck in Neutral, and I think I'm going to read a few of the words because I think, again, that's one of the keys is one of the most difficult situations is to be in is when you know that what is not right or working, and what you want to do, something different or better, can't seem to make the leap. So there is this leap that you have to make. There is, you call it faith at one time, but you have to make some sort of either adjustment, attitudinally, I joked with my other guest, some sort of inner cosmic fluctuation that might be able to shift you, because if you don't, you can't get to that level of appreciation, can you?
Yeah, and I think the other thing that is important too is that you have to have other people believe in your leap as well. And you know, you have to recruit some kind of culture that helps you support your vision. And in business, it's real easy because you have to have the team kind of make the product that you want to make. But individually, you have family and friends. And if you say, I want to be a professional baseball player, if they don't believe it, that's going to hold you back. But if you can find people that see your vision, that you can explain it to, and they say, of course you can do that, you got a much better chance of getting there.
This show only exists because of my wife. Because I did not want to go on at one point, but she insisted upon it. And now, between my wife and son, they supply me almost on a daily basis just with that. And at the same time, you give us advice to not share with them all your angst and all your problems. What do you say? It's one of the biggest waste of times for both people, because that's what the essence of their roles is for you to share when it's not working, as well as the insights when it is, and then let them, like you say, tell you shouldn't be a ball player or you need to go in that direction. You can't be afraid of that, and so many of us, we're taught to be that rugged individual that just doesn't let those things out.
I think that's especially true with men, you know, who are supposed to be, you know, leading the household and making the money and doing things. And you're going to set up in a role, and it's a big one, and it lasts a lifetime. And it's hard sometimes to dismantle that training that you get by the culture that we live in.
You tell us about worry, because unfortunately, sometimes when we're stuck in neutral, what happens is we begin to worry, and I mean, I've done enough of this to know how wrong that is, and yet how difficult it is to put a stop to it. Right. You know, so as I joke, I say the best I can do is just keep narrowing that gap so that the worry takes up only this much, and that other feeling of gratefulness takes up as much space as possible. But it's impossible to eliminate.
I think it is impossible, but you just said it right. If you could just kind of leap some gratefulness on top of it and some awareness of just the present, because worry is almost all the time about something that you can't control, and it's going to happen anyway. And a lot of times it just doesn't happen at all. And I think I might have said in the book, it's a terrible waste of imagination.
Well, you know, those are the exact words you said in the book, by the way. You know, it's something interesting. And this book is really not a Zen book, Z-E-N book, because on a certain level, it is really not about the journey. In other words, you appreciate the journey as you go through it, but because of what you do for a living, and have to force conclusions, you really have to stay focused on the vision, on the goal, and let the how stuff follow what you're focused on. I thought that was a unique way of looking at it, rather than sitting there trying to figure out how you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, how you're going to do it. Focus on the vision, the vision, the vision, and let the how come along. I want you to really get into that, because I think that's a hard thing. People are always fighting. What should I do next? I'm always fighting. Right. What should I do next? Where do I have to go? What do I have to do? While my vision sits out there fairly clearly, I have to figure out how to do that. How do you balance that?
You know, that's a good question, and it's different for everybody. But if you were to take, if you really could identify your vision and just clearly say, I want to accomplish this, and it's as I describe it, kind of a broad, inspirational way to describe it, it would be, for me, for example, is to help share with people how to get through change. Because what I do for a living is all about helping companies go through transition. And I would say, in order to get there, oftentimes you limit yourself by, how am I going to get there? That's the next question that comes out of your mouth. Well, what happens is, as soon as you start to look at the hows, they all pop up everywhere, all the objections to why you shouldn't have your vision realized. And then you just get stuck doing it. So if you can kind of push that down and look ahead a little bit, take that first step or second step in that direction, let everything just kind of happen naturally.
You also, and if things go wrong, you say, mourn the loss, mourn the failure, but then look at the opportunity that's around the corner, because every door that closes here, another one opens there, and we forget that. So you want to keep that, again, that mourning to, again, the shortest minimum, and that opportunity opening up to its largest expanse.
Right. And as you were saying that, I just flashed on 1,000 different examples of how the door has been closed on me, or on people that I know, and how you could sit there and just say, oh my gosh, I can't go any further, but there's no point in that, and you're supposed to go further. And if you just kind of reach around, and there's going to be another knob that'll open, or it's already swinging open for you. And when you're stuck in the past, worrying about what already caused you some angst or pain, you don't see the door opening, and you miss it. Not my law, incidentally. It's kind of a universal
it's the
law.
law of the universe, and my wife. I want to say this, yeah, because I'll tell you something. I wrote this down, and you just met my wife for the first time. So even though I know you a long time, you only met my wife for the first time. But she says your words. So I'm quoting you both because they're identical, okay? Just because it hasn't happened the way you'd like it doesn't mean that it won't, and it doesn't mean you should give up. So that's what keeps me going all the time, and that's what you say has to keep us all going all the time. Just because something hasn't happened, what possible law of physics says it won't?
It's true, and maybe it never will, but maybe something better will happen. Again, if you think about the vision, it can be played out in a lot of different ways. You don't have to be a best-selling author to realize certain things. You can't put those obstacles in the way.
You need all sorts of things coming out of you to some extent for these things to happen. We sometimes get stuck. Well, I should do that or I shouldn't do that. And really there's probably, and at the same time, I know you're careful, you want to avoid what the term is, the paralysis of analysis. You don't want to overthink a situation where you are stuck, but you don't want to just give it one or two thoughts. It may require mega ways of thinking.
If you could think of another way to find out what you need to find out, and maybe change your thought patterns, or just let it sit for a while sometimes, that'll help too.
You know, you said that if I give out your website, you will respond
I will,
to
yes,
people, and
absolutely.
it'll, let me do that right now. It's www.Book of Szen, that's BOOKOFSZEN.com. And I'm going to, right after those words, I put this, I'm going to show you my Spanish. La vida es corta para anca. Life is short, according to you, but wide. That's how you start that chapter. Life is short, but wide. A Spanish saying.
It is, and it's a great expression. And when I first saw that, I couldn't think of any better way to kind of describe the opportunities that all of us have in life and the possibilities. And that philosophically in that Spanish saying is that they adhere to that. And when you start to see the bandwidth of what's out there in a wide universe, you're not so likely to run into a brick wall. You're going to be able to go around it or over it.
Well, you say, in fact, pay attention to that bandwidth. Well, you know what? The wider that room, that bandwidth is, the more, quote, on the dial reception you may pick up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you keep it open and actually move the antenna from time to time, and even behind you, you never know who you've passed that has a message for you as well.
Wow, we got to go into that a little bit more, because that's really important, isn't it? You don't know how many people from behind you there, you may already have the thing that you're looking for, or at least guide you to that next thing. So you're right, we can't only just look this way, we have to look back. I never thought of it that way before.
Yeah, because at the time maybe you weren't open to it, and they were holding it out there saying, I'm here for you.
You have a thing called acceptance and detachment. And I'll read it. Acceptance is an appreciation for what is. Detachment is the ability to separate oneself from the trials and tribulations and angst of life because you simply can't control it all anyway. So that's kind of an interesting play on words, acceptance and detachment. Detachment always seems to have like a negative connotation to it. You give it a kind of nice positive spin there.
Well, I think, and that goes back to what we talked about the vision. You can be detached if you know where you're going. It's when you don't know and you're focused on how I'm going to do it that you get stuck. And you can only be detached too if you have the confidence that you're going in the right direction. And attention, of course, is necessary because if you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen. So you have to pay attention to some things.
Now, one of the things that moved me was you said that greatness has a twin brother known as gratefulness. And oftentimes, we don't really appreciate that as much as we should.
I think I'm guilty of not being as grateful for lots of things. And I often, and I think it's in the book too, that I have to remind myself that there are lots of people that have touched my life that I've been blessed by. All the readers of this thing, incidentally, have always sent great comments and support. And I want to recognize that, and I just don't want to do it one time and say I'm done being grateful for it. Because if you keep building on this gratitude, you'll be able to be detached from anything because you'll be full of what you need to be when you grow up.
You give us something else called weight problem, W-A-I-T. And as Tom Petty so eloquently says, the waiting is the hardest part. Yeah. But you say it's three things. Wait for something to happen is one way of waiting. Wait for something you really want to happen, or waiting for permission to stop waiting.
Yeah, I think waiting is, for me anyway, it centers around, I want to be discovered. I expect someone to call me up and say, everything you wanted that was on order, you're going to get. But oftentimes that just doesn't happen. Yet you think, and I can tell you, I had a client situation. I chased a piece of business with another company for a long time. It was a big deal, and it just never came to fruition. I couldn't accept that for a long time. I kept on thinking, they're going to call me any second. But at some point, a friend of mine just said, let it go. And it's okay to not wait anymore. And you know what? As soon as you stop waiting, you're free.
Well, you know what? You say it here. Knowing where you want to go, but not knowing exactly how to get there serves to either get you lost or maybe discover something new along the way. So that's that sense of where you also use turning doubt into positive energy. Isn't that it? That's the doubt that you turn into positive energy.
Yeah, and positive, I think, is really the key, because if you look at something that has got to be a good conclusion in here somewhere, I think you'll find the good conclusion, or you'll find a good direction. If you think it's going to be bad, sure enough, it's going to be bad. And I know one of the authors that we both love, John O'Donohue, talks about in his book, Beauty, is that if you think people are out to get you, they'll be lining up. And I always remember that from the show here and from reading his book, that it's true too. If you think something good's going to happen, good things can happen, and they will.
Well, you know, one good thing that happened, you came up with this book, Gar, and visited me on the show. I want to end with your words. Understanding who we really are is the most powerful asset we possess. Once armed with our inner truth, we can conquer self-doubt. Thank you, Gary, for arming us today.
Thank you, Barry. I really enjoyed it.
It's my pleasure, and thank you guys for joining us. Now, before Gary leaves, I'd like to leave you with these few more words from the Book of Szen. There is more to do and achieve and enjoy than we can see before us. There is a corner to turn and a bridge to cross, a bridge filled with doubt and angst, but one that we can overcome. I'm Barry Kibrick. Turn the corner and cross the bridge, for between the doubt and the angst, you will see what you need to overcome. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, want a DVD or transcript of our show, catch an episode online, or receive our weekly updates, go to www.klcs.org/BTL. Closed captioning for Between the Lines with Barry Kibrick is made possible by Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, ranked 4th best regional university in the West by U.S. News and World Report.
That's where a lot of individuals and organizations fall short. They can't see where they want to go, or they limit themselves to what they think they have to do. And that's why it's a why not.
On this episode of Between the Lines, inspiration for a changing world with Gary Szenderski. With his latest work, Book of Szen, Gary celebrates the potential within all of us to live a life of fulfillment.